We have come to the end of the questioning of Bernard Greany, the detective sergeant who was in the Special Demonstration Squad from '95, former operative with the Animal Rights National Index. He described himself as particularly foolish and stupid, and claimed not to remember pretty much anything. At the end, John Mitting said, "I hope I am not summarising too briefly your evidence to say that a great deal went on inside and outside the SDS office, which you were unaware of." He went, "Yes, sir." And that was that. What did you make? Pick the bones out of that one.
Well, I completely agree with Mitting, and that's a first. He has a better and better way of summarizing the evidence and making that clear in a most sort of polite way, being very critical of him. I'm in two minds. There's so much more you can ask this officer, but you also know that he won't give a proper answer. So should he have been there for a longer time, like a full day? I don't know. Some particular things is that the backstabbing has begun. He was quite critical of some of the other officers that were under his wings. You might remember it better in the wording about Jim Boiling. He's not high on my list.
For honesty and integrity.
Yeah, he was he's not high on my list, and then he sort of bit his tongue off, and then he was asked, and then he said, "Of my list of honesty and integrity," which is quite something to say. He also, all the things that he claimed not to remember that were like big events in the SDS, like when Rosa found the telephone number of the SDS office. He claimed not to remember anything about that. Boiling said he asked for a meeting when it became clear how close Rosa was. He said no one turned up, and that's the moment where he said, well, Boiling is probably lying.
So he was very clear that he told that he rang Greany directly, that Jim Boiling rang, when Jim Boiling gave evidence, he said that he rang Bernard Greany directly, and he told him everything about the relationship with Rosa. It was then that Greany said that he would speak to management and set up a meeting on Monday morning at 10 a.m. In E Squad, which was where Boiling was then working. Boiling said 10 a.m. came, nobody showed up. Then the next time he rang the office, they told him, "Don't ring this office again, we haven't got time for you." And that's how it was left.
Not just that. They said that they were telling everybody not to ring the office, but it's quite an extraordinary moment. You have got the biggest breach in SDS history that we've heard of, and their response is, "Don't ring the office." To me, it's like they blamed Boiling. They were washing their hands, but it's quite an extraordinary thing. They moved the office straight after. Greany was like, "Oh, these things just happened around him."
Yeah, he said, he claimed not to remember all the emails that were shown and the cover documents that were written in the SDS office about what the contents of the emails that Rosa had sent to Jim Boiling had said. But he couldn't deny that he was in the room when she started ringing the office. She rang 5 times on the one particular day. He said, yes, there was almost certainly lots of conversations about it. I don't remember what the contents of those conversations were. I was never left in any impression that there was any sexual relationship between Rosa and Jim Boiling. This is despite the fact that even in the notes it says she's got a new boyfriend, she's leaving him, all these kind of details that showed it was clearly a sexual relationship.
I think that was a classic moment of his whole style of giving evidence. He's very clear on what he wants to remember the good times. Everything else, don't recall. And it's like he watched Lambert giving evidence, so I can have a bit of that. And he just ends up looking foolish. So you can take every situation. This bit where he says he himself said he looks
particularly foolish and stupid.
The whole Operation Lime, an undercover runs fake gun smuggling plot under those. He was one of the officers who went to France. Never saw him. Totally hoodwinked. We're meant to believe that these are well-trained special branch officers. It's like, what credibility of the unit, not just of the SDS, but well, the entirety of special branch is getting quite shaken.
I mean, what's particularly ridiculous in his evidence is given that HN53 did a appraisal of Operation Lime and decided that James Thompson should have been referred to the Professional Standards Authority for disciplinary because he claimed that the entire operation was fraudulent. Now, according to Greany, though he was working, underneath HM53 at the time, that he wasn't aware that it was considered that Operation Lime was fraudulent until he was told by Operation Hearn officers in 2013. I mean, it's just not credible in any sense.
And we also know that in the aftermath of Operation Lime, they put in loads and loads of changes in terms of policy and stuff. They recognized it was a major issue. The whole of Thompson's investigation led to huge changes in the way they did paperwork. Totally over said. But I think one of the interesting things about the Operation Lime investigation with HN53 was it came up as a direct challenge to Greeny's position that there was no way on earth they could supervise their officers. There was no possibility. Everything just had to be done on trust, which begs the question: why didn't you have a more intensive recruitment process? But Don made the point. Here's intrusion. Here is you actively investigating your officers and checking stuff. Here's the list of your phone calls. It's clear that he's having relationships. You can even identify who he's having relationships with. And he had no answer. I think this is a question that was actually worth putting to a lot of the managers at the time. Here's an example of where you did it successfully. Why couldn't you do it other times?
Anybody watching the video would have got the impression that the saturation levels on their cameras, the camera had gone up and up throughout. It wasn't. It was just that the witness was getting redder and redder and redder as his lies and nonsense continued.
Yeah, and his voice went down. Maybe he was also leaning back from the microphone, trying to disappear like under the table because it was so clear that it was just nonsense what he was saying. On the other hand, we can say that like after a few days of managers this week and last week, the picture becomes more clear that the SDS was anyone was just doing what they wanted. They were not supervised at all, or the supervision was so light that you really wonder what the managers were doing. The entire SDS operation was just like no rules, no boundaries. Could you do just what you want? And I don't know. It's difficult to believe that there was no supervision at all. But what you also clearly see from the managers that we have seen so far is that they over-identify with the SDS, and they can't reflect, they can't look back at a distance because they still are the SDS and they're still angry that everything came out.
I mean, just quickly, one of the slip-ups that Bernard Greany made was when he was saying that there was no opportunity to give oversight, they couldn't have oversight, they were out in the field. He said, look, we were sending these men out. So there's a group of 50 people, infiltrate them, become friends with them, go to their parties, do whatever you want. Oh, no, not that, not do whatever you want. I mean, he's just revealed it himself, really.
But just following up on Elton's point, I think one of the things with this level of consistency of lying is just it's like the best lies are 80% truth. It's like it creates a belief, but here they are just lying so much. It says, actually, you're just lying about everything now. So I can't actually take your denials. Your denials have ceased to have credibility, and I think that was, omitting statement. It was like, well, there's a lot going on about which you didn't know. Is a charitable reflection on the officer. So he's been given a Hobson's choice of you were stupid and not paying attention, or you're lying. That's what Mitting was essentially saying. Like, you will probably be charitable, but neither reflects well. And I think any rational person watching the evidence is just going, well, you knew everything because you're denying everything except when it's convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this afternoon we'll be hearing from Bernard Greany's replacement, Ron Gilbertson, who took over as Detective Sergeant when he left. One of the last questions he was asked is what kind of handover did he give? And he said, "Oh, I like to think I would have given Ron a proper handover with full details of all the officers, but I might not have."
Remember. Yeah.
But I might not have.
Yeah.
I mean, great. Thanks. Thanks for that, Bernard. Anything else you'd like to add?
Usually I'm quite critical of the inquiry for just giving a half day to like somebody who was there for some of the critical things. I think for once I'm actually grateful that we didn't have to sit through an entire day of denial of just because it was quite clear what game he was playing.
I mean, I would say I think he was getting increasingly angry, and I think if he had been asked questions by a female counsel to the inquiry, he would have got more angry. And I think if it had gone on for longer, he may have broken. He contradicted himself quite a few times. I think there's possibility that if it had been a longer day, with particularly we think of the way in which some of the other Sarah Hemingway, for example, the way that she asks questions, where basically she doesn't let it drop. Once she gets one answer, she rephrases the question in 2 or 3 different ways, kind of focusing in on particular points, which has the effect of really getting under the skin of the witness. That it would have been possible, had he been here for a longer time, that he would have messed up in other ways.
Yeah, maybe. maybe I was just for my own sanity. I didn't have to listen because after 3 sessions, 2.5 sessions with him, it was like, oh, my head is hurting. And I was like, I can predict your answer.
Oh, I mean, for my own sanity, if they just bring them out and say, "Are you going to say you don't remember?" Yeah, all right, next one. I mean, for sanity reasons, that would be the best. But there we are. All right, thanks for joining us. I've got 41 people watching. Only 3 of you have liked. I keep saying it, but it would really help visibility if you're able to like all these videos. We'll be back again this afternoon with Ron Gilbertson. Please join us then. He will be broadcast with a 15-minute delay. So it should start, I think we finished slightly late there, so it should start about 2:20. Bye for now.